Thank you, Belen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. I am Robert Hutchings. I'll be chairing the hearing this afternoon. I'm joined on the board by Ian Mon and Valerie Werhun. The assessor representing the Assessment and Taxation Department, City of Winnipeg, is Roddy Pontanilla, and our recording secretary is Belen Rojo. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of the exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questioning by the assessor and the panel. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items number 6 through 9 on our docket today. Ms. Rojo, please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Roddy Pontanilla.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name. And you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you, Belen. Good afternoon, Mr. Reimer, Mr. Pontanilla. First item on the docket that we're dealing with today is item number 6, file number 22-2636. Address is 3269 Portage Avenue. And we're dealing with a 2023 Realty Assessment Appeal. Mr. Pontanilla, when you are ready, please.
Mr. Chairman, if I might interject for a second, if it helps in terms of brevity, I am just seeking confirmation of the present assessment, just so the Board's aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Mr. Pontanilla, could you please introduce for the record the property?
Sure. So once again, the file number is 22-2636. The roll number is 0732-554-5000. The address is 3269 Portage Avenue, and the 2023 assessed value had gone out at $1,352,000. Did you need me to go through the full presentation and just wrap it up?
Just a brief summary, please.
Okay. So very briefly, this is a strip mall located on Portage Avenue. My photo evidence orients us. I believe it's on Portage and Park Hill Street, right on the corner there. I have included some photo evidence of the subject property. We have received a mailer from them, so we're okay with that. We do have a sale from 2004 for $560,000. We do have some leases on the subject. The first tenant at 3269 has a lease at $15.72 a square foot. Tenant 3271 has a lease for 836 square feet at $12.92 a square foot. And 3275 has a lease of 2,600 square feet at $14 a square foot. My comparables in my brief were a mix of different strip mall units located within the subject properties market region. So I do have a range there from, I believe it was 13 at the lower end up to perhaps around $15, $15.50. Yeah, $15.50 at the higher end. And then if we look at our rental rates, we do have rental rates that seem to be within that range. We have our first premise is 1,192 square feet at $14.83 a square foot. We have 836 square feet at $14.23 a square foot. 2,600 square feet at $13.15 a square foot. And 2,294 square feet at $14.18 per square foot. And this is all model-driven rental rates. And then we do have our model parameters for the subject. So we have a 4% vacancy, a 3% expense, and a $9 shortfall. And we have a capitalization rate of 6.45% to bring us to our overall assessed value of $1,352,000. And then on page 10, we do have a summary of the information that I've just provided. On page 11, we do have our capitalization rate study information. So we do have some info there in regards to our cap rates and our ranges on them. On page 12, we have our Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, providing some of the more general excerpts in relation to what we do here. And then on page 13, and taking us to the end of our brief, is the subject's income and expense mailer. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Pontinia. Mr. Reimer, it's noted that you're asking for confirmation of the subject property. Any questions required of the assessor?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mon, any questions of the assessor?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie?
None at this time, thank you.
And I have no questions either. For our decision, Mr. Reimer, would you mind summarizing your position? Did you are you just doing a verbal acceptance or verbal request for confirmation?
Yeah, indeed. We're asking that the present assessment be confirmed at this time. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Pontini, any questions of the applicant?
No questions. Thank you.
Ian, any questions? Okay.
No, thank you.
Valerie, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to both parties. That concludes, item number 6, 3269 Portage Avenue. Next item on the docket is item number 7, file number 22-1768. Address is 3431 Portage Avenue. And we are dealing with a 2023 realty assessment appeal. Mr. Pontanias, please wait for a minute while we pull up your brief for 3431 Portage Avenue before you proceed.
And Mr. Chairman, while you're pulling that up, I can confirm that the grounds of liability to taxation and classification are not going to be under debate. We're seeking confirmation of both the liability to taxation as Code 60 other and the classification as well.
Okay, so there were preliminary issues of 2 points of appeal, or 3 points, I guess, with the realty, but okay. Thank you. And sorry, Mr. Reimer, to confirm, you're requesting confirmation again of the value?
Not the value. The
Okay.
value is a separate issue, but we're requesting confirmation of the liability to taxation as fully taxable, and
Yes.
also confirmation of the classification as Code 60 other property.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, thank you for that. Does everybody have the brief up? Ian?
I do.
Valerie, you okay? Okay. Okay, Mr. Pontania, when you're ready, 3431 Portage Avenue.
Okay, so the file we have in front of us is 22-1768. The roll number is 0722-001-0000. The address is 3431 Portage Avenue. The 2023 assessed value has gone out at $1,443,000. And I do have a recommendation to make on this file.
Okay,
So if I can direct your attention to page, I believe it's 9 of the brief, you'll see the original income stream in front of you.
can you bear with us a second, please, Mr.
Yep, yep.
Ponte?
Of course, of
We'll
course.
get to that.
Yeah, you let me know when you're ready.
Okay, perfect. Does everybody have it, Valerie, in?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and so what you see in front of you is this is the original income stream that was applied to the subject property. So we have 4 premises that are associated with the income stream. We have all C2 premises. The first one is 375 square feet at $8.94 per square foot. The second premise is 7,104 square feet at $10.52 per square foot. The third premise is 1,250 square feet at $11.87 per square foot. And the last premise is 1,029 square feet at $12.03 per square foot, which gives us a total leasable area of 9,758 square feet and a total potential rent of $105,304. And then from there, we have applied the model parameters of 4% vacancy, 3% expense, a $9 shortfall, and a cap rate applied of 6.55%, which gave us our original value of $1,443,000. So after the review, it was deemed appropriate to slightly alter the or adjust the rental rates with the subject's actual rental rates that are being declared in their leases. And so accordingly, we now have revised rental rates for the following. The original, the 375 square foot premise, it's now at $12.22 per square foot.
Mr. Pontanilla, maybe perhaps could you provide the original blended rate and the revised blended rate?
Sure. So the original blended rate was 9,758 square feet at $105,304 per square foot, which gives us, I believe it's $10.79 per square foot.
Thank you.
And then the revised valuation, it's 9,758 square feet at $92,559. And the blended rate is now $9.49 per square foot.
Thank you.
Did you need me to go through every single premise to continue on with my presentation, or is it
Maybe
does it
just,
satisfy?
can you just highlight the vacancy used, the expenses used, and the revised NOI, and then the...
Yeah, I can do that for you. So the vacancy used was 4%.
Thank you.
The shortfall used was $9 per square foot. 3% was the expense for other. The net operating income is $82,678.
82,000, pardon me?
678.
678, perfect. Thank you.
82678, and then the cap rate applied is 6.55%.
Okay.
And that gives us a revised value of $1,262,000. $1,262,000.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You could continue with your lease comparisons, I guess. Please.
Okay, like with my comparable information, or?
Or did you, I'm sorry, did you say that you had based it on the actuals?
It was based on the actuals, yeah. So I
Okay.
used the lease information from the mailer, and then I based the rental rates on actuals.
Okay, could you point us to where you include, I guess on page 6, would you mind going through those?
Okay, so in terms of this one, I actually, so when I submitted the brief, I had actually just included the COVID questionnaire. the mailer for the 2020 cycle, we do have it, like we have it on file, the department has it, but it was
Oh.
in another directory, so I actually didn't have it in the brief here. So
Okay,
I can run through my notes that I have on it, but it was done with the mailer's information that we had on file. If you want, I can go through it. I have it on my notes here, but it's up to you guys, whatever you want to do.
yeah, if you don't mind summarizing perhaps, how's that? How many tenants and the rates?
Sure.
and-
So there were four tenants that we had.
Okay,
Had the first tenant, the Oris Men's Hairstyling. I believe that's the one we had at $12.22 per square foot. And then we had the other tenant, the 7,104 square feet at $9. I believe that's what we used for that one there. Yeah, we did. And then we had 1,250 square feet at $11 a square foot. That was actual. And then we had the final 1,029 square feet at $10 per square foot actual.
okay. And just to confirm, the new blend or revised blended rate is $9.49 a square foot?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to ask, but might as well get it all out there on the
Oh, that's
table.
okay. No problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Reimer, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Valerie, any questions of the assessor's evidence, revised income stream?
Nope, none at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions either. Mr. Pontanilla, Mr. Reimer, bear with us 1 second while we pull up your brief, please, for 3431 Portage Avenue. Mr. Reimer, when you're ready, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to start this by advising the board that I sought but didn't get yet receive instructions. But I will tell you that we're in agreement with the value of $1,262,000.
Okay.
It would so we'd ask the board to consider that value. And the only caveat I put on it is that I don't have formal instructions back from the owner, but I fully expect to get them. So I would suggest that the board give serious consideration to $1,262,000 based on my own review as well. And that would be pretty much it.
And that would be considered a verbal acceptance, pardon me?
Well, I can't, because I don't have instructions, I can't formally accept, but I fully intend on getting those instructions. As I say, my advice has been given, but it was just a matter of timing because of some very short timelines. So the value of $1,262,000 put, to put it very plainly, I believe that's a very fair result here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Mr. Pontanilla, any comments, questions of the applicant?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie, any questions of the applicant?
None, thank you.
Ian, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, just for our purposes, just to confirm, you're asking for confirmation of the class code 60 and confirmation of the liability, current liability on the roll. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. And you did submit an income and expense statement requesting a reduction, I guess, but we're dealing with the suggestion that you
Put it this way, Mr. Chairman, based on my review and the discussions with Mr. Pontanilla, the value of $1,262,000, I believe would be a very appropriate consideration for the board. And as I say, I fully expect to get. It was just a timing issue. I fully expect to get instructions, the formal instructions that I'm seeking, fully agreeing to that number.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reimer, for the clarification on all those 3 points. That concludes item number 7, 3431 Portage Avenue. Next property on the docket is item number 8, 1822 Grant Avenue. And it is item number 8, file number 3216, 1822 Grant Avenue, and we're dealing with a 2023 Realty Assessment Appeal. Mr. Pontanilla, please wait a moment while we get there.
Okay, no problem.
Ian, are you there? Valerie, are you there?
Yeah, I've got 'em.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pontanilla, when you're ready, please, 1822 Grant Avenue.
Okay, so the next file that we have in front of us is file 22-3216. The roll number is 1207-220-0000. The address is 1822 Grant Avenue. The 2003 assessment has gone out at $1,457,000. And I do have a recommendation to make on this file as well.
Okay.
So if I can direct your attention to page 8 of my brief, and I'll give you a second to get there.
Thank you, Mr. Pontanilla. If you could just, maybe just highlight what the blended rate was originally and the revised rate, and then we'll go through the parameters of vacancy and expenses and the cap rate and a revised NOI, please.
Okay, so this one is a little bit more straightforward. So the for the income stream, the rental rates are going to stay the same, which means the overall blended rate is still going to be the same. So I'll just quickly run through it. We have 2,000 square feet at $20.09 per square foot, 2,000 square feet at $6.81 per square foot, and 2,800 square feet at $17.49 per square foot, which gives us a total of 6,800 square feet at a blended rate of $15.11 per square foot. We have a 4% vacancy on there, 3% expense rate, $9 shortfall per square foot, which gives us the net operating income of $93,253, which was then capitalized with a 6.4% rate to give us the original value of $1,457,000. The adjustment made for this subject was an adjustment to the cap rate. The cap rate was increased by 0.6% to 7%. So that was where the adjustment was made, and the overall market value, or the overall assessed value, or market value, I guess, has changed, has been reduced to $1,332,000. So 1,332,000.
Thank you, Mr. Pontanilla. Mr. Reimer, any comments or questions?
No questions, and again, as with the previous property, I'm very comfortable with that value. Ask the board to consider it, and I expect to have the, again, because of the timing issues, I didn't get instructions back, but I expect to secure those instructions very shortly, and that would be the extent of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Valerie, any questions of the assessor?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Ian, any questions?
None.
Thank you. And I have no questions. And Mr. Reimer, would you mind summarizing what your summary of your acceptance of the property, please, or the recommendation, pardon me?
Certainly. So the Mr. Pontanilla and I did have a chance to review it shortly before the hearing, the matter. And I am very comfortable, as I say, with the value of $1,332,000, and would ask the board to consider that value in making its deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments required by either party?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes item number 8, 1822 Grant Avenue. And last item on the docket, item number 9. Address is 840A Sargent Avenue. Item number 9, file number 22-2309, address 840A Sargent Avenue, and we're dealing with a 2023 Realty Assessment Appeal. Bear with us, Mr. Pontanilla, please.
Yeah, no worries.
Does the panel have the brief up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pontignac, please, when you're ready, 840 Sergeant Avenue, Unit A, I guess it is. Yeah. A.
Yeah, I believe it's 840A. It's a bit of a weird address, but that's what we have. So the file that we have in front of us is 22-2309. The roll number is 1302-250-7000. The address on the brief is 840 Sargent Avenue, which we have as 840A Sargent Avenue. And the 2023 assessed value has gone out at $659,000. So this subject property has been labeled as a commercial strip mall. We do have one building associated with it, 2 premises associated, and it's a 1-story building. We have an actual year built of 1928 with an effective year on it of 1960. And the total leasable area for the subject is 2,600 square feet. So following on page 2 is an image of the pad eye view of the subject property, so we can see its orientation along Sargent Avenue. And then on page 3, I have included an overhead pictometry view, which provides more information as to its orientation on Sargent as being on the corner of Banning Street, Banning and Sargent. On page 4, I have included the north-facing view of the subject property and the west-facing view of the subject property, so we can see its orientation there in the neighborhood. And then on page 5, I have included some images of the subject property itself, so we can see that it has 2 tenants, both restaurants. And this is a partially owner-occupied property as well. We have received income and expense information from them. We have a mailer, so that's okay there. And we do have a subject sales history for the subject, dating back to October 5th, 2000 for $140,000. And no lease information was generated when we made the brief. For rent comparables, I have included several. So this neighborhood is a little bit hard to find true net leases just due to the amount of information that we have. So I did a search based on market region. So I do have some from within the market region, but then I've also included near the bottom of the brief, the bottom 3 leases. Those would be leases that are the same as the tenant that's leasing. In other words, the subway. They're subway leases. Just to give you an idea of what those restaurants are leasing for. Those ones have a rental range from $20.50 at the lower end to $24 at the higher end. And then the overall strip mall rent rate information has a range from $12 at the lower end to $22 at the much higher end. And as we move on to the next page, onto the income stream, we can see the 2 premises associated. So the first premise is the owner-occupied premise, and we have that at 1,000 square feet at $15.81 a square foot, and that's model-driven. And then we have the second premise, that's the subway at 1,600 square feet at $21.92 per square foot. Which gives us a total of 2,600 square feet with a total potential rent of $50,082, sorry. And then from there, we've applied model parameters of 4% for vacancy, a 3% expense rate, and a $9 shortfall, which brings us to a net operating income of $46,446, which we then have a modeled cap rate applied of 7.05%. to bring us to our total assessed value of $659,000. And then on page 9, we do have the summary of the valuation that we just spoke of. On page 10, we have the cap rate information that we include in our briefs. On page 11, we do have our Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And then on page 12, and taking us to the end of our brief, is the subject's income and expense mailer information. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pontignac. Mr. Reimer, any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Yes, thank you. Could we firstly, Mr. Pontignac, if we could go to your page 7, please? And these are the lease comparables. So if I heard you right, the last three comparables are you're saying subway leases?
Yes, that's correct. So the last three, 1925 Portage Avenue, 1086 St. Mary's Road, and 1504 St. Mary's are subway leases, as well as looking here on my sheet, 1055 McPhillips Street. That's also a subway lease.
Okay. So we can agree that our reference date, the valuation date for this assessment is April 1 of 2021, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I noticed that 1925 Portage, which is the third last comp, and 1086 St. Mary's, those leases are basically around 20 years old relative to the valuation date, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They're very long leases.
Okay. And the as far as the location, of course, Portage Avenue, 1925 Portage being significantly further west, and St. Mary's Road, the two properties on St. Mary's Road, they're in the south end of Winnipeg, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And as far as the location, we've got the comparables, the two comparables on Ellis geographically would certainly be the closest to the subject of the comparables, correct?
That's correct.
And the dates of those two leases is also very, very near the valuation date in May or in 2020. I take it we can agree on that as well.
That's correct.
And those leases were between $13 and $13.50 a square foot.
That's correct as well.
And then the last, and I hadn't realized this, the other ones I sort of had an idea about, but you're saying 1055 McPhillips. That is comparable number 5 in your submission. That's a subway that actually has a lease that's reasonably close to the reference date at $17.01 a foot.
That's correct.
And the subject, I take it we can agree that the subject actually has a lease that's nearly as close for the subway space, and that's an August 17 lease at $18.20 a foot, correct?
Just give me 1 second. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the remainder of the parameters, well, I think you alluded to it. On your page 8, the entire valuation is model driven right from your rents all the way through to cap rate, correct?
Yep, that's correct, Gary. All model driven.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Ian, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
I do just a couple. For confirmation, Mr. Pontonia, all of your rent comparables are restaurants. That's fair to say?
They all look like it except for two that I'm a little iffy on. 596 Ellis Avenue and 1039A McPhillips. The tenants' names that they're showing me, I don't think they're restaurants. I might be mistaken, but at least of the reference period, I believe they're not restaurants. But the other ones are all
Okay.
restaurant comparables.
Okay, thank you. Now the renovations, 1928 building with an effective age of 1960. Do you know when these renovations were done, or can you tell us when they were done?
Give me 1 second here to look at my permit info that I had looked at. Yeah, it's I didn't really see any permits that we had on the system here, so it must have perhaps happened in the 90s. I can only speculate, but I'm not showing any high value permits, at least from the information that I'm looking at here.
Okay, so the effective age would have been established at the time the renovations were done and the property inspected?
I believe so. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I heard that and I wrote down the rent per square foot.
Yep.
I think you said it was $18, and I'm just looking on my printout or my readout here for the income expense mailer. You say that was $18.21 for the subway?
The subway was $15.81. The first premise the first premise is the owner occupied space.
Right.
1,000 square feet at $15.81 per square foot. And
Okay.
the 1,600 square foot premise at $21.92, that's the subway. So that would be the one to take a look at if if the board feels the rental rates are a little aggressive on that premise.
Okay, and what was the actual for the 1,600 square foot premises? That was
The actuals, well, they're actually, it's a gross lease. So what I had calculated was $28.13 per square foot, but that's a gross lease. And once you net out to the three common recoveries, I had the same rate that Mr. Reimer had as well, approximately $18.20 per
okay.
square foot.
That was going to be my next question. So thank you very much. Those are my
You're welcome.
questions.
Thank you, Ian. Valerie, any questions?
No, mine were just answered. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Pontinia, your original assessment, the blended rate would be $19.57 a square foot.
Give me 1 second. Yes, it is 1957.
Okay, thank you. And just to confirm Ian's question, there's an actual, you calculated as a net lease of $18.20 for the 1,600 square foot portion or
Yes,
the
that's
subway?
correct. Yep.
Okay.
So it, yeah, it was a gross lease that they were declaring, but I believe I had the same approach that Mr. Reimer did. I also came up to 1820 approximately.
Okay. And any information on the private, the restaurant on the other side?
No, the mailer had no information on it. And any information that I would glean from it would be book rents at best, as it is an owner occupied space. So.
Oh, it is. Okay. Running two separate businesses in a
I believe so. I just on the one side, from my understanding, unless Mr. Reimer can clarify, it's the Asian restaurant is the owner occupied space, and then the Subway is the tenant that's leasing.
Okay. Now I'm looking at your pictures on the front. Let's see. Where are we? We've gone by them. And it would appear that this was page, this Google Street View.
Yep.
It would appear page 5, I guess.
Yep.
It would appear this originally, going by the fascia there, was some kind of a chain restaurant that was converted to a Subway. Would that?
I believe so. It looked that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Perhaps Mr. Reimer can clarify on that as well. But yeah, it definitely does look like that's sort of a building.
Kind of looks like a Robbins, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what came to my mind as well. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And that's where where there was a result of a effective year built, possibly.
It could have been. That's a great point. That's right. That could have been where it came from.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That is all my questions. Mr. Reimer, give us a moment to get to your brief, please.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Reimer, is everybody there? Ian, Valerie?
I got it.
Okay. Mr. Reimer, when you are ready, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So actually, I'm going to, just while I'm thinking of it, address the point, the questions that had been posed about not the Subway, but the other space. If we go briefly to my page 27, please.
Okay.
This is the rent roll component of the income and expense mailer that was sent in by the owner. And you'll see two entries on the tenant verification form. The first one being the Subway that we talked about. And that isn't a gross.
Mr. Reimer, would you mind waiting a sec until I get to that page? Thank you. I have to open my browser here and get it to pull up. Sorry. Okay, page 27.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll tell you when I'm ready.
Tell me when you're there, yeah.
Yeah, or when we're ready. How's that? Page 27, 21, 22. Okay. Does everybody have it in front of them, Ian?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pontanillo, you've got it?
I do have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, please.
Thanks. So on page 27, as I mentioned, this is the tenant verification form that was sent in by the owner. And the question had been posed about not the Subway space, but the other space. And if you see in the second entry on that page, under the owner occupied column, it's marked with a yes. They've actually gone sideways with a Y, but so I can confirm that's the owner occupied space. The Subway is leasing the other unit at the gross rental rate of the gross monthly rent is $37.50 a month, and the after the gross lease costs are deducted, the net rent, and of course it would be an estimate because With gross rents, the actual net can fluctuate from year to year depending on the expenses, but the net rent we've calculated as a stabilized amount is $18.20. So if we move briefly then back to page 13, please, of our submission. And again, if the board members and Mr. Pontanillo might let me know when you're there.
Yeah, I'm not.
I am there. Valerie?
I'm there as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reimer?
Thank you. So at the top of page 13, our submission this afternoon is based upon the application of a potential net market rent of $46,618. It's based in turn on the $18.20 net rent that we've calculated for the subway and a market rent of $17.50 for the owner occupied space. Of course, that not being a chain restaurant, but a local independent operation. And we believe that the overall rate and the $17.50 rate is well supported by the chart at the middle of page 13. We've got 5 comparables. The last 2 are actually retail. As Mr. Pontanillo mentioned, I had a bit of a tough time getting very precise comparables in this area, but we do have the 2 retail properties on Ellis in very close proximity. They're between $15.50 and $16.50. And then we've got 3 restaurant properties, 2 on William. They're actually located within the same building, and that building has got an advantage of location to the extent that it's very, very close to the Health Sciences Center. So I'm well familiar with that building. That would be considered in my respectful submission a superior site. And the 3rd property on Erin Street is at the corner of Erin and Portage. This is a larger restaurant tenancy at $13.75 a foot. That is included. The size certainly would be a factor there, and that's why we're not putting a lot of weight on the $13.75, but it is in the general vicinity, sort of in the area along, as I say, at the corner of Erin and Portage. So the average and median of those rents is $17.14 and $16.46 respectively. The $17.50 market rent for the subject, we believe, is very well supported, as I say, with both considering the location and quality of the subject relative to the lease comparables. And I'd also note, if you recall my questions of Mr. Pontanillo, with the restaurant rents with leases negotiated close to the valuation date in the same area on Alice, they tended to be in the $13 to $17 range for the one being the subway. So we certainly believe the overall average rent for applying $17.93 a square foot is well supported by the evidence of both parties. So if we turn then briefly to page 15. So as you can see, the most significant item under examination, or the difference I should say, would be in the potential rent. It's not, as one that can appreciate when you look at the respective valuations, it's not a striking difference, but there is a difference. And we're suggesting that application of $46,618. We're using the 4% vacancy allowance and, of course, the full 5% for the non-recoverable expense, along with the 2% for the structural reserve, shortfall at $9 and a 7.05 cap rate, which is consistent with the department's capitalization rate. We're suggesting a total value of $577,000. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to give a very, very brief overview, as I know the board has heard this many times in the past with respect to the non-recoverable expense study. So if I might ask the board members to open that document, and please let me know when the document is available.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. I'm just finishing my notes here, and then I will get right to that document. I believe it's before the briefs. All right.
Okay.
No, I'm still not there. I'm sorry. We're going to the retail capital cap rate study. Is that right, Mr. Reimer?
No, the non-recoverable expense study, please.
I'm sorry. Okay. I do have it up. Ian, Valerie?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Valerie. And Mr. Pontanillo?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reimer, when you are ready, please.
Great, thank you. If I could ask the board members and Mr. Pontanillo to turn to page 5 initially. And at the very bottom of page 5, and again, Mr. Chairman, I know you've heard this many times, so I'm going to go through it at a very high level. Fundamentally, we believe the expense allowance was always intended to be relating to expenses that are not recovered from tenants, even on triple net leases. The bottom paragraph on page 5 is an excerpt from the assessment department's earlier manuals, and it sort of reinforces that. It says at the bottom there, the most important non-recoverable cost items to be aware of are space marketing costs, which include both tenant inducements and leasing costs, and an allowance for structural and mechanical repairs. We looked then, turning briefly to page 7, we looked at the, I'm sorry, that was an excerpt from the valuation text, not the assessor's manual. If we turn to page 7, we looked at what some other provinces were doing with respect to these non-recoverable expenses in Saskatchewan. The Saskatchewan Assessment Authority does factor in these non-recoverable operating expenses. On page 7, they list 4 of them: legal and audit fees, advertising and promotion, and leasing commissions. And those are the very 3 that we're suggesting should be included in the valuation and the analysis. And that's what we've done in our approach as well. The second one there is the structural repairs. That actually, the structural repair item is in our respectful submission covered off by the 2%, what's historically been was the 2% other allowance. So with that in mind then, if we turn to page 10, middle of page 10, we list the 4 items that we considered in our analysis, and those are leasing commissions, professional fees, advertising, marketing, and in some very limited cases, asset management fees. Those fees are not common, but where they were reported, we did include them in our analysis. And then on page 11, we have the summary of our analysis and the percentages for these non-recoverable expenses that were determined from the operating statements. The right-hand column includes tenant inducements, and I stress again, we're not relying on that. We're providing that for the board's reference. Those percentages are much higher still, but the second column from the right represents the analysis and the percentages that were indicated by the operating statements for just those 4 items I mentioned. Again, the leasing commissions, professional fees, marketing, advertising, and where they were reported, the asset management fees. The average of those percentages was 6.64% with a median of 5.98%. So we conclude that the 5% allowance is appropriate, and we have applied it both in our valuation for the subject and also crucially in our capitalization rate calculations as well. Starting on page 12, this section is new to the non-recoverable expense study submission. This provides the board with an analysis of the effect of reducing the non-recoverable expense allowance from 5% to either 0 or, as we're commonly seeing now as the 2023 assessment, to reducing it from 5% to 1%. On pages 13, 14, and 15, we provide the example of the mathematical effect on the capitalization rate specifically if one adjusts the 5% non-recoverable allowance. These examples are all using precisely the same assumptions and precisely the same set of facts, save and except for the non-recoverable expense percentage that's being applied. So on page 13, with the inclusion of the full 5%, and based on the assumptions we've listed at the top of that page, you can see that the indicated capitalization rate is 7.38%. On page 14, we show the effect of the reduction of the non-recoverable expense to 0, which had been the case for the previous cycle, and the indicated capitalization rate then increases using the very same set of facts from 6.38% to 7.79%, 7.38%, sorry, to 7.79, an increase of 41 basis points. And for our purposes, probably the most relevant example is on page 15, where the non-recoverable expense item is reduced from 5% to 1%, with an indicated cap rate then of 7.71%. So that represents a 33 basis point increase in the capitalization rate relative to the initial valuation where the full 5% was applied. The reason that's important, Mr. Chairman, and I obviously it's within the board's purview to make a determination on the non-recoverable expense item based on the evidence that's been submitted. But I stress this, that our capitalization rate analysis and our the 7.05% that we've applied in this case, which is consistent with the rates in our study, all of the rates in the study were based upon the application of the full 5%. So if the board is inclined to reduce that expense allowance, then we would ask that the capitalization rate be increased, and we're rounding it here to 25 basis points. So if the board were inclined in this case to reduce the expense allowance from 5 to 1, adding in the 2% for what's historically been known as the other expense, then we would request a capitalization rate of 7.3%, which is an increase of 25 basis points from the 7.05 that's been applied. Now, capitalization rate is not at issue. We're applying the 7.05%, but I just wanted to take the board briefly to our own capitalization rate conclusions, just so you understand the context in which we're suggesting the 7.05 is appropriate, assuming one applies at 5%. So, Mr. Chairman, if you might advise when you have the capitalization rate study in front of you, and then I will proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. I do have it in front of me. Valerie,
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Ian, you've got it?
You're right here, thanks.
Mr. Pontonia?
Yep, I have it as well.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, when you're ready, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I'm actually going to go straight to the heart of the matter, because the capitalization rate is actually not under debate, but I have suggested in my materials that the 7.05 is actually consistent with our study. So if the board members and Mr. Pontonia might turn to page 24, please.
Thank you. Bear with us in a second. Is everybody there?
Yep, we got it, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So as you can see, these are the analysis of the transactions, the retail transactions that we considered in our capitalization rate analysis. And again, we've shown the two columns. The very right-hand column represents the capitalization rates using precisely the same analysis, except for reducing the non-recoverable expense item from 5%, or expense category, I should say, from 5% to 1%. And the second column from the right, it's labeled Altus Cap, and that is based on the capitalization rate derivation using the full 5% non-recoverable expense in our analysis. So as you can see there's quite a range of properties, as one might expect. And in the case of the subject, the 7.05%, I'd suggest it's reflecting, as we've noted in the hearing, this is an older building, quite an old building. And with respect to the sort of the renovations and the maintenance of the building, certainly it's been maintained. It doesn't look like a 1928 building, but with an effective age of 1960, it is certainly not a new asset by any stretch either. And with the quality, location, and the retail, given the nature of the operations in this area, we think the 7.05% is appropriate. I had actually mentioned the property in my submission was on William Avenue, and actually the very last capitalization rate, number 13, is that very property. The rents being achieved are in one case higher, and in one case a little bit lower than what was being achieved by the subway at 1820 a square foot. That property, though, as I mentioned, that property has a definite advantage of location over the subject, being that property being very close to the Health Sciences Center. So I'd suggest that a premium would need to be placed on the subject and its location relative to that property. And that property, as you can see there, using the full 5% allowance, the indicated cap rate is 6.85%. If one reduces it to the 5% down to 1%, the indicated cap rate is actually 7.08%. Again, in my respectful submission, being a property that is certainly superior to the subject. So for all those reasons, we're asking this afternoon, Mr. Chairman, that the board consider the potential rent that we were suggesting at $46,618, using the full 5% and the 7.05% cap for a total value of $577,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Mr. Pontonia, maybe perhaps because we've got the cap rate and the expense studies up. Do you have any questions on either of those studies presented?
No, I'm okay with questions for Mr. Reimer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, any questions on those two studies?
I do with respect to page, sorry, just give me a moment to turn back to it here.
Sure.
Page 11, Mr. Reimer, your chart with the average or median and average amounts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mahoney, are we talking the non-recoverable or the cap study now?
Sorry, the non-recoverable study.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
How many of those entries of the 30 are either owner occupied or partially owner occupied, or can you tell us that?
Oh, none of them are owner occupied.
Okay.
No.
Or
And your question, I believe, is a good one. The valuation, the entire premise of the income valuation is based on what an investor would, how an investor would value the property by virtue of the income that the property is generating. So an owner occupied property, of course, we're not valuing it based on the use to the owner. We're valuing it based on an investment asset. And so the expense items there are all fully tenanted properties using income streams that are available to potential investors. So there's no owner occupants in any of those.
Okay. The other question I have is the approximate size of the charted properties listed. For example,
Ian, could I confirm we're on page 11 of the expense statement?
yes, I am.
Study. Thank you.
But I'm looking at page 10 as well. I'm kind of scrolling back and forth, but taking page 10 and 11 of the expense study, the fact that this has only 2 premises and 2,600 square feet, would that lead to a possible conclusion that the leasing commission's professional fees and advertising marketing might comprise a smaller percentage for a smaller property, fewer suites?
Yeah, so the quick answer would be, as far as I sort of segment that into 2 points. The advertising, marketing, and the professional fees, absolutely. Their chances are they're going to be less. The professional fees are typically relating to legal fees or accounting fees, you know, for those kind of things. And when you've only got a small building with 2 tenants versus a multi-story office building, the economies of scale there would indicate somewhat lower expenses. But very important distinction, the leasing commissions, that is, and the board will appreciate, the leasing commissions are typically based on a percentage of the lease revenue that's secured either by renewal or with a new tenant. And that's going to be a constant, because that's a percentage. You're going to only have the 2 premises, but you're also going to have if one of the 2 premises becomes vacant or needs a renewal, that percentage is a constant, whether you've got, 2,000 feet or 200,000 feet. It's based on the revenue that's actually being generated for that space. So that, in terms of economies of scale, that would have no impact on the leasing commissions. However, it would I'd suggest that your point is a very good one as to advertising, marketing, and the professional fees. That would have an impact.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Ian. Valerie, any questions regarding these 2 studies?
Nope, good, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions either. Now we'll go back to Mr. Reimer's brief with the income calculation. Mr. Pontanier, any questions on that brief presented?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie, any questions on the brief that the applicant presented?
None, thanks.
Thanks, Valerie. Ian, any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to confirm some numbers, Mr. Reimer. So you're using 2,600 square feet at a blended rate of $17.93. Is that right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you. And vacancy the same, 4%, shortfall at $9, 7% expenses. Your NOI is 40,684, and you're using the assessors or matching the assessors cap rate. You agree with it, and your request is for $577,000. And my second question was your comparables. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the page. those 5 comparables that you provided on page.
Page 13, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think you said that index number 1, 2, and 3 were restaurants. I think you've detailed that there, right? Okay.
Yes.
And 2 are on William, and 1 is on Aaron Street, and I think you mentioned it was close to Portage. Is that right?
It's actually at the corner of Portage and Aaron.
Okay. Portage and Aaron. Okay. Okay, I think I know where you mean, right? Okay. And those are net rents. Would the subject property, in your opinion, be superior or inferior to William or Aaron? Would you mind commenting on that for us?
Absolutely. And I apologize if I hadn't sort of made that in my submission. The 2 on William, I'd suggest the William location is a superior location. It's actually adjacent to the Health Sciences Center.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Okay, so yes. And so the one on Aaron, I mean, quite bluntly, Mr. Chairman, that's a larger premise and the location is good. I'd suggest, as I say, of the comparables, actually, I believe 1 and 2 and 4 and 5, given the location, would be the most germane to the current discussion. But then going back to specifically the subway lease in place that was negotiated in August of 2017 at $18.20 a foot. I believe that's the single best indicator of the market rent for that space, consistent with both ours information, well within the market information that we've got, as well as what the assessors got. So, but that the comparable number 3, because of the location on right at the corner of Portage and Aaron, and also the size, I do think that's the 1375. I didn't put as much stock in that.
Okay. And I think you had made a comment in cross-examining Mr. Pontanillo that he had provided those 3 or possibly 4 subject leases for subway properties, but they were very old. Is that correct, if I'm recollecting?
Well, there's a couple actually. There's a few things there. The 2 of the leases were very old, like 20 years removed from the valuation date.
Yeah.
3 of them were in the south end of the city, very, very different market in the south end relative to the subject. But I did note that the one on McPhillips, which is the closest geographically, the subway that's closest geographically, that was the one that actually was a 2016 lease at $17 a foot.
Okay.
That's entirely consistent with the 1820, and again with our retail comps as well. So the subway lease that's closest in terms of geography and also is reasonably close to the reference date is entirely consistent with the 1820 that the subject subway is paying under the 2017 lease.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reimer. I have no other questions. Mr. Pontanillo, any requirement for summary?
Okay on the summary, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, any requirement?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes item number 840 A Sargent Avenue. We have heard all the items scheduled and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you to both parties for appearing. You'll hear from us as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Carrie.
Have a good weekend, Mr. Pontanillo.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
We'll talk next week.
Yeah, we'll talk next week.